Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have David Ray, XYPN member and founder of DRM Wealth Management in LA, on the show today. David Ray broke away from a broker-dealer a couple of years ago to start his own RIA. He now has around 100 client households that he's working with and has the goal of making $1 million in revenue in 2019. David Ray focuses on working with clients that are friends of the LGBT community. He gets a lot of referrals from his clients to friends and family members that might not be in the LGBT community like the majority of his client base, but are supporters and advocates. David Ray dual majored in finance and theater in college, and that background, along with a lot of boots on the ground effort, has driven his media success, having been on TV about 50 times in the last year and quoted in the media over 70 times in the last year. He's getting around 10 prospect calls a week right now and is turning down a lot of business since his firm is just him and his husband at this point. We did talk about his decision to work with his spouse, how he works from home and meets with clients in his home office, and how he has had so much success working with the media. This is an episode you are not going to want to miss.
Support for today's episode comes from Ruby Receptionist, the only live remote receptionist service dedicated to helping financial service professionals win more clients and build trust. With all you have going on, answering incoming calls may not always be a priority, but you can rely on Ruby to create exceptional experiences for your callers. From their offices in Portland, Oregon, Ruby's friendly professional receptionists answer calls live in English or Spanish, transfer calls, take messages, collect new client intake, and make follow-up calls, and more, just like an in-house receptionist, but at a fraction of the cost. Never miss another opportunity due to a missed call. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN or call them at 1-844-853-7829.
You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/140. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. That's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with David Ray. Hey, David Ray, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
So another great example of if you take the initiative and email me with your awesome story, I'll invite you onto the podcast. So thank you for reaching out because you have such a cool story that I was unaware of and look forward to learning more about it over this episode.
I'm happy to share, and I hope people find it interesting.
So could you give me just sort of a quick high-level view of sort of where your business stands today, sort of the structure of your firm, where you're located, number of clients, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in LA. I launched my own RIA back in, I think I technically joined XY in April 2016, and I officially launched mid-June 2017. So I kind of came out and left the broker-dealer space. I started way back in 2003, back on the stone tablets and hard copy paperwork and all that fun stuff in a broker-dealer. And I was at a firm within the broker-dealer that really had a pretty good, at the time, I thought, financial planning light version of financial planning. And I was there my entire career and just kind of looked at where things were going and decided, I really need to go in the RIA 100% space. They kind of added their hybrid RIA over time. And it was more about them than me and my clients. And I decided, it's time to go and do my own thing. And I was so happy to find XYPN. Right now, I have about 65 full consulting clients that have consulting agreements. And I'm really doing, I would say, the full service, everything that I would do for my service model of, financial planning and investments. And I probably have another 50 clients or households that I probably just handle their investments that I've collected over time, or maybe at this time, the full financial planning really isn't on their agenda at this point in time, or they're not fully committed to it.
Sure.
So, I'm not going to say you can't be my client anymore, but I can handle a lot more of those people if, we agree that, I'm just handling your investments. Here's what we're going to do. And here's the service level that goes with that. I have one employee, so my husband works with me. He came out to make sure I could handle all of the things that go with running your own business. It was good timing there, and it just has really worked out well for me. And fun note, I was at the same broker-dealer that when I first started that Kitsis was at. So,
oh, really?
I looked that up. We were both at a broker-dealer that no longer exists.
I'm shocked. They let Kitsis go and they let David Ray go.
They let us both go. I lasted a lot longer because I started there right about the same time he was leaving. And I was there until my entire career. And then like basically a month after I officially left, they announced that they were being purchased by LPL. So I really think I had great timing to leave because all the stuff I went to go open my own RIA and move clients over, I would have had to gone through to stay at a broker-dealer hybrid RIA combo. So I would have had to repaper everything basically the same way I did of launching my own RIA. So it's kind of like seeing that after, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had perfect timing.
Yeah, it's a great point because it's one of the big fears when folks are breaking away. Just you have to repaper all the clients. You have to have all those conversations. And to your point, you didn't know it at the time, but you were going to end up having all those same conversations anyway. So it works out well.
It definitely did. It also explains why I think some people, the process was much smoother than I expected. I've heard the horror stories of, people being walked out of the office or, their clients are called 800 times. And I didn't really have that process. It was a much smoother process, but I'm guessing they were just a little busy with being bought. They didn't have the time. Maybe. It's a good point. No, I think if you handle it right and you communicate with your employer and stuff, it can go well. I'm not saying it necessarily will, but I just was communicating with them, and the firm I was at within the broker dealer, which is great. I had great relationships with them, and I just I let them know why I needed to leave, and it really wasn't anything that they could change. It was mostly the broker dealer stuff, and I really wanted to be in the RIA space, and I was having some challenges with some of the not being allowed to talk about the fiduciary rule or call yourself a fiduciary because you're at the broker dealer and stuff like that. And I felt like I was getting all the negative of what other people commissioned products they were selling. And I was getting, tainted with that, but not getting the benefits of actually getting the big commissions, I guess is the one way to look at it, just from a business standpoint. Yeah. And it's been, I highly recommend people at least explore their options if they're in a broker dealer space or they're at a firm of just really looking at it. It's not right for everyone. And I have some colleagues that I think, are really thriving in the system I was in before. But for me, I think this has just been a great, eye opener of what I'm able to do and what really can happen when you control your own firm and really able to do exactly what you want for your clients and offer like the best service for your niche and for who you're working for and, plan your practice around your life.
Yeah. And what I find is sometimes the folks like yourself, and I don't know if this was necessarily you, but the folks that keep asking for more and they are pushing back against the broker dealer saying, hey, why can't I talk about fiduciary? What if I want to do it this way? Can I offer the service model? Eventually, maybe the firm is maybe not sad when you leave and go do your own thing. Because when you fall outside the norm, the broker dealer doesn't really have a place for you. It works. Broker dealer model works really well when you sort of fall in line, but when you keep pushing against that, it's never going to be a long-term fit.
Yes. And, just the resources I use, I blog and I'm on TV and I do all this stuff. And I was probably using a lot of resources for their compliance department having to review these things. And I definitely pushed back a few times and I'm like, I can't say what, or you want me to give you an equal, what are the negatives of saving for retirement? I'm like, I'm sure there are technically negatives to like save it, and I gave a snarky response of like, well, if you save for retirement, you might pay taxes if you have a higher income in retirement. Ooh, negative. Or you don't get to spend the money now. Like, ooh, that'd be the same if, oh no, don't get a raise at work. You'll pay more taxes. Like no one's going to say that. We all want to pay less taxes, but you're not going to be like, no, don't give me a bonus or a raise. I don't want to pay more taxes.
Well, it's funny because you were probably using up a lot of compliance resources and not selling a lot of whole life policies and high commission generating annuities, it sounds like. So, but for the folks that are out there, I know we have a lot of listeners that are in the world that you were in. Some of them are sort of being, maybe in maybe even this podcast is being used to sort of expose them to the other side of the industry, which is the RIA world where things are so different. So I guess for someone who's in the position that you were in, 5 years ago, how do you describe the difference to them today that you've experienced and sort of the pros and cons of going pure RIA, whether they're an owner or not, and just being sort of on this side of the industry as opposed to sort of where you were prior?
Yeah, I mean, I really was in a great position. I was at a firm within the broker dealer, so I had, extra training and I had a lot of value added, but then there's a lot of cost that goes with that. So like my payout was probably much lower than, if I'd just been directly at the broker dealer, but they were paying for office and they were paying for a lot of training and we had a lot of, camaraderie and great stuff there. But I know I personally wasn't capitalizing on all of that stuff. Like I had my own office that I was paying for on top of the office that they provided. And I was branding myself. So, where they would, they give you the technology and the marketing and all that fun stuff. But I was really just doing my own thing. But you realize a lot of the stuff you're learning, if you go to like a broker dealer conference, in my experience, it was kind of, there was some advice that was like, okay, yeah, we want you to sell these things that we get, on our premier list or the list that, that they were making more money off of with their back end deals, which is fine. And, they need to make money. And I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but it would be like, oh no, you don't want to sell Vanguard funds or you don't want to sell these low cost ETFs, like why would you do that? Right. You can go on our platform and you can be on, I personally, some of the technology things, there's certain custodians I've dealt with over the years. I'm just like, how is this technology useful for someone? Like, how could someone go on here and do it? I've always wanted my practice to be as easy and efficient as possible. And I just felt like a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with at the broker dealer was extra paperwork. And that doesn't help my client. If they fill in 5 extra forms for their account, that doesn't add any value to them. It just means I'm doing more work and I'm less happy. I guess is the nicest way to put it. I just felt it was extra work. And I opened my first fee-based account or fee, assets under management, whatever you want to call it, fee only. It's not fee only, but my first account where I was charging just assets under management back in 2004. And, I slowly drew down what I was doing commission wise. Cause when I first started, the training was on like A-share mutual funds. That's what we did, and that's fine. I had my 6 and my 63 and, we did mutual funds and we did some annuities and I did a lot of like universal life insurance or things like that. But over time, it really grew into more of, the assets under management. And I did, started to do some consulting agreements before I knew what it was. Like they looked at me like I was a crazy person sending this little consulting agreement. Someone's going to pay me, this random amount of money to do this, analysis of something. And it wasn't on their agenda. But I kind of was in my silo with the broker dealer in my firm, but I really was looking around and seeing how the commission world was just kind of like being on a hamster wheel in my opinion. Like you get a lot of money up front and there are some advantages, especially if you're starting from scratch. I probably looked at, what I brought in there and I'm like, okay, I brought in like a good amount of revenue, but if I'd made that at 1/12 of 1% per month, it would have been a much tougher first few years because, it just spreads it out and the numbers get smaller. But I also looked at, I didn't want to have to be recreating the wheel every year. I wanted to, someone described it as having a parking lot. I wanted to have my parking lot. There's only a certain amount of spaces there. And I wanted to keep plugging clients in. And all of a sudden, I wanted to have my 100 ideal clients or 150 ideal clients or whatever that number is for you. And I just wanted to plug in, that many clients and be like, look, I keep doing good work for you. I'm helping you reach your goals. And I keep getting paid along the way. Whereas if I had done like option A annuities, I would have gotten paid upfront a huge amount of money. But then it was so up and down. And all of a sudden you've got 500 clients or 1,000 clients and you have no revenue coming in to support servicing them. And you have to keep going out and getting more and more business. And, there's nothing wrong with going out and getting more business. I'm taking on new clients and I'm getting more business now, 15 years later. But I also know that I have a very nice base of income from all the assets under management, all the consulting agreements I have, so that if I don't take on another client this year, I'm in still pretty good shape.
Right. You're still making money.
I'm still making money versus, if I go on vacation and, in a commission world, there's no money coming in, So I just really like being on the same side of the table with the client too. And I just feel for me, the RIA space just gives me a lot more options to really market the way I want, to do some of the outreach and things that I wanted to be doing that in a broker dealer space. That was really my rub with them. There was just certain things that I just didn't agree with. And, I get why they did certain things they were doing, but when they said I couldn't talk about the fiduciary rule at all, I was like, excuse me, it's one thing I get when you review my articles or you review a blog post or something, I have to, they have to review it, make sure it's compliant and all that stuff. That part I totally get, but just to be like, no, you can't talk about this starts to be like, it's not like I'm coming in with some crazy investment scheme or performance. I'm just saying like, I think you should have a fiduciary advisor.
Which it's unfortunate when you can't claim to be a fiduciary because of the environment that you are working at. So it is an interesting world, but it's cool to hear it from folks that have been on both sides. Listeners know my background. I've never worked sort of on the broker-dealer side. I've heard about it, right? We generally hear the horror stories. It's like either horror stories or like this is the greatest model of all time. Like it is hard to get an objective viewpoint of it, but it's just it's a model that made sense, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when we needed someone to broker our products. And we're just sort of moving away from the necessity of broker dealers, which also means they have to evolve. And I know that they are, or at least some of them are. And I think, how we view broker dealers today will change with some of them just because they are starting to push the concept of being a financial planner, being a fiduciary, not pushing products, or not just being product centric, but it'll be an interesting transition for them.
It will be. And I think my deciding moment to leave, I really avoided the broker dealer conferences. I think I went to 2 in 15 years with my broker dealer, but the last one I went to, I had some conversations with people when the fiduciary was kind of in the news, and really the conference was kind of dominated by the changes that were coming, and you had speakers talking about it. And I just would meet these guys that were in their 60s or 70s, and they were like, I'm not changing. I'm already pissed off that I'm not getting the 8% commission I used to get in the 30 years ago. And I was like, to each your own. Before that, there's choices on how you want to run your practice and how you want to charge your clients. We can, converse about that all day. But I was just going, I just think it's a better model to get, say, 1% a year over time and keep serving your clients. And now that I've been doing it for 15 or plus years, I'm like, if I'd started with 1%, I'd have made 15% over that time, and it's still better for the client because I'm serving them and I'm doing stuff. And I don't have any regrets of being in the broker dealer space as long as I was. So I don't think it's a horror story. I just know that where I was chafing and it was causing me trouble, and a lot of other people, it would be a harder time to leave because I had been aware that I was going to be going full RIA, not necessarily leaving on my own, but I was, looking at moving all of my business to, I guess it would technically still be fee-based because I was in a broker-dealer space, but everything I was opening was going into, what could be a fee-only account. I'm charging, percentage of assets and flat-level fees and all of that stuff. But if you'd been in the broker-dealer space for that long and you have all these annuities, you have all these trails, it does take time to transition stuff over, or it would be much harder to leave if you were like, oh, look, my quarter-point trail on those mutual funds is $100,000 a year. It starts to be much harder to leave, or it's a longer process. And luckily, I kind of was not planning ahead, but just moving my business in that way anyway. So it wasn't that hard, and the amount of money that I was leaving on the table with leaving trails or annuity trails and all that fun stuff, it wasn't that big of a deal. And a lot of the annuities that I had in my book of business were things I'd just taken over. So, you come in with, and I was licensed to handle annuities. If you come in with this annuity and there's a surrender charge, I'm not going to take you out of it. I think that's
right.
Necessarily. I'm going to review it and we might take it out later if there's no surrender charge. But, some of them are bad. I mean, some of those things, I had one that came in with like a 30-year surrender charge. And
whoa,
I didn't want to be the negative person, but I was like, you're 70 years old. I hate to break it to you. You'll probably be dead by the time this surrender charge goes away.
No kidding.
And I just, there's advantages to that policy, and there's certain guarantees that come when they know they're going to have that money there for 30 years or whatever it is. But I mean, come on.
It's still amazing to me what shows up in our offices. Like I want to believe that some of that stuff is done, but it's not. So 30-year surrender, that's a new one for me. Talk to me about sort of your career path. I mean, was this where you started, or did you have another career that you were in before you started working at the broker dealer?
So, I went to college. I got my 2 degrees in business and theater. I came to LA to be famous and be an actor and all that fun stuff. And I did that for almost 2 years. And I go, okay, let's not do this anymore. And I went to I started interviewing at financial firms. I always knew that this would be an industry I would end up in. And I was lucky enough to have some friends who were, big traders making millions of dollars a year at, different mutual fund companies. I had people that were wholesalers, insurance salesmen. And I really kind of looked at the industry and figured, where do I fit in best here? Because I'm a very social person. I like to be out with people, but I also really love math and nerdy stuff like that. But I just couldn't see myself staring at a computer screen being a trader for 20,000 hours a day. Or, I was out here on the West Coast in LA, and I was at a major fund company down in Newport Beach. And, they're on East Coast time. And I'm like, that schedule sucks. Going to work at 4:30 every day, but really was not appealing to me at 23 or 24, having a big social life. And I went and interviewed at the firm I was at. It was called Trilogy Financial, which was within National Planning, was their broker dealer. And they really had a career path that really appealed to me because it just, I'm a gay man, and in my interview process, they said, "Oh, we sponsor Pride. We have a booth at this Pride and that Pride." And I'm like, perfect. I don't have to worry about being in the closet here or being discriminated against here. And it really appealed to me from a career path standpoint. If there was training, there were mathematical, like a lot of the promotions were, it was based on production and sales. If we look at it now looking back, but at the same time, it was numbers based. So if I went in and did what I need, worked hard and produced a certain amount of business, I'm going to keep moving up the chain of promotions, and the payouts go up and all of that fun stuff that I just thought was really appealing at that point in time, versus being like, David's the hardest worker. He worked 80 hours a week, but we're going to give the promotion to this guy over here, which was where some of my other friends were at, and they're more typical corporate jobs where they were, getting a salary, but the upward mobility wasn't there. Definitely from a beginning, I'll just call it commissions, but you earned what you brought in, and then you get a percentage of that. And there's a lot of advantages to that, and there's a lot of disadvantages to that. And for me, it worked out because I think my first year I made more than I would have probably at an entry-level corporate job. And then year 2 and 3 and 4, I was definitely making well above what the industry average was for the people. I think you guys threw out the statistic of 150 grand. 15 years ago, that was a little lower. I think it was 110, 120. So I started to be in six figures in my first full year, which was amazing for me. And keep in mind, some of that was commission. So, it's a little easier. It was probably a little easier to get there than, $125 a month over, you'll get the full $1,500 for the year in 12 months, or, getting paid quarterly. So, even C shares, you got the whole 1% up front. So it did make it a little easier to hit some of those numbers, but they really had a good training process. I think there were about 200 advisors when I started in 6 offices, and it grew to about 11 offices. Funny enough, 11 offices and the same amount of advisors, but the industry has kind of changed over time. So it really was a great place. There was some competition between the offices. They had, company trips and a lot of the things that are just really good from a camaraderie and, great place to work standpoint. So, the training was there, but again, you kind of had the training of where they were, and you start to see that some of the people that were 20 years ahead of me were giving training and they were trying, but I was in my early 20s still. So, I was really just looking out at the world, and I was really going, what else is out there? And, they were kind of, you don't need your CFP. And I was like, I need my CFP. I went and took the test before, I think I started basically a year in. I went and got the course, and then I took the test a little over 2.5 years in. And then I had to wait for my 3 years of being in the industry to actually be a CFP, but I passed. So, I got that early 2006 officially. I became a CFP, and it just, kind of driving from there. And I realized a year and a half in, I got promoted to vice president. Not that that really matters, but that was their top
VP title. Yeah.
I got the VP title, but that was their top title if you weren't in management. And I went, I'm 25 years old. What else can I do? It still doesn't matter from your practice and stuff, but that stuff, there was motivation there. So I was like, I had them create a senior vice president position, which I never ended up getting or taking, and it's now since gone away. But it was just kind of funny because I was like, the things that motivate you, at some point,
if you're sort of that award driven in a way, to have that, to have that line that you can get to.
And they had the top producers within the company, and we had an awards banquet every January, and the top 13 producers got, up on stage, and it was really competitive up there, and it's still very competitive, but it was extra motivator, and it made it a little bit more fun. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do for every firm, but it is a lot of fun, and it really drew, built a good environment for the advisors there.
So where were you having luck finding clients? Because even I don't care what the commission rates are, in order to make 6 figures in your first year, you're doing a great job of prospecting and bringing in clients. Where were you, that initial fresh into the industry, where were you finding success with clients?
So I was at the very beginning, and things have changed over time. I was that person that was at every social event, at every networking event. I'd been bartending and cater waitering before I started here, kind of between school and they'd pay some bills. So I had a stack of 150 business cards of people that, were a little older-ish that had some money-ish. So, I was, ish is a whatever relative term there. But, I probably from that stack of 120 cards, I took on probably 25 or 30 clients. And, it's clients I wouldn't necessarily take on, but it was a lot of like rollovers here or there, or I've got this $20,000 sitting in some mutual fund. I haven't talked to the advisor left, or I have no idea. I started a BNI chapter in 2004, and I'm actually still a member. And I know that's a very contentious issue when I talk to other XYPN people. It can be great. It doesn't always work out.
Now, what is that?
It's called
the I chapter?
BNI, Business Networking.
BNI, sorry.
Totally.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a few people that, like Eric Roberge was on. He, I think, did really well with BNI. Others, not so much. So just real quick, tell listeners what BNI is, and then how have you leveraged that positively?
So BNI is a networking group. It's across the country and internationally, and you can have one person per profession. So I think you build a little deeper relationships than going to a chamber mixer and there's 75 real estate agents and 75 financial planners, and everyone is there looking for themselves. I started a chapter and we're now at 50 members, and we're going to pass probably $3 million in business this year. So, I mean, it's a good amount of revenues going through the group, and you really get to talk more in depth with people and build the relationships. And I think there's points in time where it was really amazing for me. Like at the beginning, I can track this whole referral chain of people that I would never have met in my normal life. It was probably, I'm in my 20s when I first started, and we had people that were, late 40s, early 50s that had, at the time, huge amounts of money for me. And they've been clients now for more than a decade, and just kept going down the chain of referrals and referrals and referrals. And it just really helped my visibility and made me a little bit more comfortable too as a professional to get up and speak and, hone how I was talking about my business. So there's a lot of, it's not just about the revenue you're bringing in from the group. I think, I have a team, like I've had a lot of CPAs that I've been able to work with over the years that have come through the group, and being able to refer my clients to mortgage brokers that I trust and things along those lines that have just been really helpful to my practice. And I have this whole referral chain of people that really drove my success in the early years. And that was a huge part of my early success. It's been still constant referrals and good clients, but it's obviously, as my practice has grown, the same amount of business coming out of the group is less meaningful to my practice. The more revenue I bring in, sure, the less change. And when you have 100 clients, there's one new client doesn't change your overall revenue as much as it would, say, in your first few years when you're like, I went from one client to 2 clients. That's huge. It doubled my client base. And then from there, I just really set it up where out of 50 members, we probably have 20 people that are part of the LGBT community, which is my main focus. I describe my niche as friends of the LGBT community, because you don't have to be gay to be my client, but you have to be cool with gay people. So, if I don't want you coming in, you're not, my other groups, if I was a Black woman, you'd see it on my photo on my website, or, and not call me if you were not wanting to deal with a Black woman. Not saying good or bad on any of that stuff. People look for certain things, and I don't want someone coming in and going, oh my gosh, I hate gay people, and not knowing that I'm gay. And it just let's avoid that awkward situation. Let's throw it out there.
Screen that out.
Take that for what it's worth. I know a lot of people pick advisors based on, religion or other interests, which is great. I have had a few clients come on that hired me because I was not Jewish. They just didn't want someone at their synagogue to know their business. So, you take it for what it's worth, But I think just being out there and being authentic with that has really also drawn people to me, because I think friends of the LGBT community, I get a ton of single women, because unfortunately our industry is getting better perhaps, but there's just not as many women as there could be. So I get a lot of people that would maybe want a woman. I'm not saying I'm all feminine and all that stuff. I don't really care, whatever brings you in, but I'm going to stand out against the average financial advisor with that. And I attract some interesting people that just find it fun. And I'm here in LA, and I know we've had do you talk politics? You do not talk politics. I would say with my, not talking politics here, but with where I'm based right in LA and being LGBT, and that's my ideal client, I can probably make certain comments that I wouldn't recommend other people do if they're in if I was in Texas. Let's just leave it at that. I'm pretty confident.
That's a good point.
I've met Michelle Obama at the White House, and I had a photo up on my website, and I've had people email me like, I'm not hiring you because you have Michelle Obama on your website. I'm like, dodged a bullet. We'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? I don't need to deal with you.
That's incredible. That was going to be my next question, was because you are, willing to open in who you are, on your website and obviously in these conversations. I mean, are you getting pushback from any prospective clients or even people in the industry sort of experiencing any of that level of discrimination because of that?
I know there's things in that I've been left out of or not been involved with, or probably opportunities I've lost more in the corporate world of different opportunities, or, I've been around stuff that I was like, oh yeah, they probably would have hired me for that speaking gig if I wasn't out and about, walking into some of the broker dealer conferences and things that I've been around. There's the audience for that. But I think in net, I want to avoid sitting down with people that aren't going to be fun clients and people I won't like. And I think if you don't like gay people, we're probably not going to get along. It's just not worth it to me to have clients that I don't want to deal with. But I think for the most part, if you really look closely at my site, it's there, but I think I keep it in a pretty professional standpoint. So it's a lot of the stuff is a gay person's going to look at my site and go, duh, he's gay. Where someone else might just be like, oh, is that what that meant? He talked about the Golden Girls a lot. And, there's some stereotypical things on there, or just talking about certain stuff and where I live, or places like bars I go to or events I was at that you would have, if I talk to you, you'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, which is fine. And that's great. But it's going to be offensive, and I don't mean it to be offensive to anyone, but if specifically don't want to hire me because I have a picture of a black woman on my website, Michelle Obama, we're not going to get along either.
No, and if someone is offended, and not offended, but if someone is uncomfortable or I guess offended or any of those various, experiences that causes them to not want to work with you, there are so many advisors that are out there that would work with them and would maybe be a better fit. And yet there are so many, folks in the LGBT community that quite frankly would be uncomfortable with many of the financial advisors that are out there because, again, maybe stereotypically, we tend to be, your more conservative white men that maybe aren't comfortable having a gay client. And so it's awesome that we're starting to see more and more advisors that are focusing on this community because it is a community that has been discriminated against for a very long time and continues to be. Obviously, things have gotten a little better, but have a long way to go. But to have an advisor that speaks their language and is comfortable with them, whether or not they even fully understand the situation, just to be comfortable being able to share who you are and what your goals and dreams are without fear of discrimination is huge.
It makes people more comfortable. And I definitely, I would say, unfortunately, I've had clients that literally were turned away when I think someone set an appointment and didn't realize, it was going to be two men coming in or two women. And then there's just people that are just not comfortable, especially prior to gay marriage being legal. There was definitely some people that were not telling their financial planner or their financial advisor that they were married or partnered or out to them. Not that you need to be out to your advisor, especially if you're single, like whatever your business is your business. But, if you're in a committed relationship, gay, straight, or otherwise, that changes a lot of the stuff we would be doing as a financial planner. And obviously now that you can get married, it really will screw up stuff if you're married and I don't know you're married. We're going to like all that retirement planning, all that tax planning is not going to matter or make sense if you're married and I don't think you're married, and it makes me look really bad or your advisor look really bad. So, garbage in, garbage out. I mean, I didn't have that, but I do know that I was taking on clients that were like, I just couldn't tell my person at the wirehouse that I'm gay. I'm like, they've known me 10 years. And I'm like, there's something wrong with that. Like, I'm going to be getting into your money, which is taboo. And we're going to be talking about some of your deepest, darkest secrets. This isn't, you should be telling that person that you're in a relationship or you're married or, you own a house with someone. It just changes the advice. And it's important to be comfortable too. So.
And one thing I want to point out about that is as a straight male, it has never occurred to me to not tell someone that I was in a relationship. Like that has never come across my mind. And yet that is an experience that I think many people that are in your ideal client profile experience. And for the folks that are listening that are straight and don't ever mind telling someone that you're married or engaged or living with someone, just recognize that there are times, and this is a great example of something that we just don't experience that others are experiencing, and do your best to try to create an environment that's comfortable for people to share that with you. Because to your point, as a financial planner, we have to know that. You couldn't possibly, act as a financial advisor for someone and not know they were married, and yet they may not be comfortable telling you that. So it's just something to be aware of that's just something that's out there that I don't think a lot of folks realize.
Thank you for that. That's a great point.
So you do so much in the media. And I'm curious to sort of take this back to, you said you double majored. I have never heard of a finance theater double major, but how has the theater major, do you feel like, I guess, helped you or as a financial advisor? Do you think that's actually had an impact on your career?
I think it absolutely has. Because I think, at some point we are performing and we are presenting, and a lot of my success has come from being visible. And especially the last few years, I am doing so much TV and media. And I think being able, I don't call it performing on camera because, we all have the information. But, if I went in like the average engineer and was talking math, taxes, no one's going to want to listen to that.
Sure.
You might go on TV once and be like tax code, that line, this, that, versus, making it interesting and relatable and, hopefully entertaining. And it just means that I get asked back so much more. And, when I give entertaining answers for quotes and articles, those reporters usually call back, which means I have to do way less work to be on TV regularly or get quoted regularly versus, pitching yourself and getting on once and then never again. I get, asked back, or I have reporters, probably 2 or 3 times a week now. I've been doing this enough where I get asked for quotes on, articles, and there's things that aren't in my niche at all. But, if someone asks, I literally just did an interview for Hip Latina magazine. And I know you can't see me here, but I am a man, I'm not Latina, and his hip is arguable. So, but I was like, I'm helping this reporter out. It's a freelance reporter, and who cares? My name's there, it's on the site.
Yeah.
It's just funny because I was like, wait, really? Hip Latina magazine? Whatever. I'm happy to do it. But it just really, I think it's made my process so much easier because for me, the media has really when people reach out to me, and I probably have 10 plus people emailing me or calling me a week at least every week asking for appointments. And those people have seen me and found me somehow, and they know they want to work with me for the most part. I mean, they're coming in and there's very little selling or talking about me because they've already kind of made that decision, or they want to know, if they can afford me, or if if it's a good fit and all of those fun things. Versus I know at the beginning, it was like, please work with me. Please, please, can you put $50 a month into your IRA, please? Please. And now, it allows me to, be a lot more selective on who I want to talk to. Also, if you were to go to my website versus anyone else's website, and I've got 20 videos on there, like people feel they know me already, which is really helpful at the beginning because they just kind of come in and they feel more comfortable telling me their life story and telling me all of this stuff. Because I'm a really big fan of video, whether it's on TV or not. But then it also is good for my existing clients because I'm not probably as high touch as some of the other advisors in XYPN. My service model is mostly once everything's running smoothly, we're on like an annual review and check-ins along the way. Like we'll have a tax check-in and stuff, but I'm not doing really quarterly reviews with everyone unless there's a reason for it. Personally, that's my opinion. I like to live easy, but this allows me to check in, and my clients really take pride. And I love it with social media because I'll see they'll take a photo of me on the TV, and my advisor's on TV. Oh my God, I love him, and all the stuff that testimonials I probably should share it or click like, but I'm going to anyways. Talk to your compliance department with your social media. I'll leave it there, but it's just great because they're seeing me and without having to actually come in and see me, and they're just like, oh, you were answering all the questions I had. I went on ABC when the stock market dropped last week, and I was just like, perfect, that answered my questions. I didn't think I should worry, but then I saw you were on TV and you told me what I needed to hear. So it saves me having to go make 100 phone calls of like, the market dropped, and I literally had 2 clients call in out of like 100 on the market drop. One wanted to put money in, and the other one was literally just starting, and their money was just in the process of transferring. Super fun, losing money like day one. But luckily, half went in before and half went after. And now we're actually, by the time they bought it all, we're back up. But, it was just like, here's where we're at in this process. Don't worry about it. I talk about market dips all the time and everything I do as much as possible because I don't want to have those freaked out calls. I was working during 2008, 2009, 2010. It was not fun when the world seemed to be ending. And the more you can let people know that this stuff happens or we're not in 2008 again, the better your life will be as a financial advisor. Because I'm all about making my life as good as possible and helping my clients as much as possible. And them stressing about the market going down is not going to help them retire faster or buy that house faster or take a vacation or any of that stuff. It doesn't help your returns. And I'm pretty sure there's stats all over the place of the more you stare at your portfolio, the worse you'll do. But I don't have the statistic in front of me.
Yeah, I love your point around the videos on your website because I experienced this with a podcast and going to conferences. And, I was at the FPA Wisconsin event recently, and I had someone walk up to me and say, oh my gosh, like I've listened to every episode of the podcast, which now is like 140 hours, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
But there was like, I've listened to all the podcasts and like they know me. Like there's nothing else for them to learn. Now it's time for them to share with me who they are and ask any questions that they have. And so I've seen the power of this through the podcast. You can do it with video, you can do it with podcast, you can do it with content in general, but it does let people, you can tell your story to a lot of people. They can really get to know you. They know I have a Southern accent, so they're not surprised. You know what I mean? Like there's no shock. Like if you've listened to even a chunk of the episodes of the podcast, all of my stories and all of my jokes, right? So it is an awesome way to be able to connect with your clients. And one thing I do want to point out to advisors as well is I get a lot of advisors that ask me, where do I find young talent? And of course, the CFP programs are phenomenal, but we're just not producing enough CFPs. And we're seeing a lot of it, young advisors coming out of theater backgrounds, communication backgrounds, things that are not traditionally, quote unquote, financial planning. And yet, you have this superpower. Like you have a superpower that the rest of us don't have because of that background. And that's what's led to the fact that I suspect is driven a lot of the success that you've had in the media is because you're trained, you're professionally trained in how to deal with those situations. And you're not, looking at the ground or clicking your pen when you're on camera or anything. So I think that's huge. I am curious how you initially got there, because now you're doing so many, I'm assuming reporters see you from other reporters. So did you make a concentrated effort to get into the media initially?
I did at the very beginning. I think having my niche in the LGBT market, I met a few people. I was able to write for a few magazines. My big break in the media really came from, I was doing the AIDS life cycle. So I rode my bike from San Francisco to LA, and a member of my team was working at the Advocate magazine, which is like one of the biggest gay magazines in the country. And I did a series of articles about the AIDS life cycle and riding the bike and, telling stories of people on the team of why we rode. And from that meeting, the editors there, I got to write a financial column for the Advocate. So all of a sudden, I'm writing a financial article in the national magazine for, my niche, which is amazing. So, I had that opportunity, and there really isn't much in the financial realm in that magazine. So it even stood out even more. And I think my first blog, my first article, I literally landed a perfect client with $1 million and all of this good stuff. So it really worked out well. And then that just kind of steamrolled into other stuff. And I started doing my own blog, and I got into, Huffington Post and things like that. And then the TV stuff, I had random people just being visible, and I'm here in LA. So a lot of stuff happened. I had KTLA, which is the local CW station, was having me do these money smart segments, and I'd come and film me, and there'd be little stuff there. Again, it was great. And I gave them, every time I was in there, I'd give them another idea, and they'd be like, oh, that's a great idea. So then they'd call back with yes, we can do that. But my really big break on that was my previous firm. The president of my firm had a publicist, and I'm right by the studios, and one of the times he couldn't make it. But, when the media calls, they need someone for their spot. It was a last minute, what to do with your tax deductions. And I live right by the studio. So I got to pop in and do a 5-minute segment in studio. And I'm sweating through my suit. I'm freaking out, but it didn't translate on camera. So, it's that actor that's, has stage fright, but you don't know, and they pull off their lines. So from there, they started asking for me, and it really ballooned from there, because I just kept getting on more and more stations from there. And when you have stuff, more stuff comes your way. Once you're quoted in the media, you're on TV, and you can go to my site, and someone Googles, financial advisor LA, or someone on some topic, they're going to call me. And I've done a Comedy Central show. I've done a couple shows on Bravo, national news. A lot of the national news stuff is kind of breaking news stuff, and a lot of that's just being visible. And since I've done so many videos, again, if they're going to search for someone in LA to come be on camera, who are they going to call? Me or the person that has a headshot there, or their 1980s headshot or picture, their portrait from 1980 in black and white on their website, or no contact information. So I'm just being more visible, and it just really all translates into it. Just more business, because it's not being on TV directly that I think really drives business. I have gotten clients literally that call after I'm on TV, and I definitely see spike in traffic to my website and stuff like that. But it's really that I capture that stuff and have it on my social media, and I have it on my blog, and I email it out once a month, and I have all those extra pieces that go together. So I'm getting like fifth and sixth referrals from someone that's like, so-and-so told so-and-so who told so-and-so who told so-and-so that you're the best financial advisor. So then they call me,
Yep.
you know what I mean? And these are, again, kind of because it's social a little bit, it's in the community or it's entertainment industry or these are ideal clients that shouldn't be calling out of the blue. I mean, there's people that need to be pulled in and need advice and need help. And there's people that could benefit or have, like, I'm stressed about my multi-million dollars, in my 401k. What do I do with it? I need help. That's different than like, so-and-so is about to go bankrupt. Can you give them some advice? Or my credit card's maxed out, or not. So, it's just been a great way to do it. And for me, and it's not right for everyone. I know some people have really had great luck with blogs, and it's really fun to see in the XYPN community to see, when people share their success stories. They're like, oh, I've been blogging for 6 months. I finally got someone to call in and sit down with me. It's so great to see all of that stuff and see the success other people are having. So I really know how it can grow. It really isn't you put up one blog and you get a client. You may get 10 people call you in 1 week, or certain stuff that I think, oh my God, everyone's going to love this topic. And it's like, no one reads it. And then I put up something I think it's just stupid. And I'm like, gets shared 1,000 times. You're like, what happened here? You just never know. So you kind of have to stick with it and just be visible, because especially with like social media now, a lot of your friends may not be ready right now, but something will come up, or down the road, they're going to call you. They've been meaning to call you. I mean, half the time I get an email from someone that's like, I've been meaning to call you for a year, or I've been looking for an advisor for a year, and I finally just saw this post, so I had to call you. It's like, finally,
like something happened.
Something happened, and it's just being there. It's being visible and on their top of mind when that something happens. It may be job switch. It may be their stock option change. It may be they're getting married or divorced or whatever, but it's just being there when someone needs something.
So you dropped just a total gem in there, but I don't want to let it get glossed over. And that was the point that you made when the media comes in, they do a video, is giving them an idea for another story.
Yeah,
this is something most people do not do. But anytime you're on the phone with reporters, every now and then they'll say like, hey, if you got any other ideas for stories, have an idea. Because if you give them that idea, you handle the story that they're on, you say, oh, by the way, there's this other thing that we could talk about at some point, or your listeners or readers might be interested in this topic. It will bring them back to you. It's a way of, getting that snowball rolling. And that is a very small thing, but it reaps huge benefits.
It really does.
So I didn't want to gloss over that, because that's such a great thing to do when you're working with the media.
It is a great point, definitely. And because there's so often we could there's a specific story and we're talking about something very specific, and maybe something you said in the interview really catches the reporter's eye, and you can just that would be like its whole story on its own. We've got 30 seconds to talk about the new GOP tax plan, whatever you're in on, or IRA contributions before tax deadline or whatever. This is a whole nother topic, something retirement planning, but you drop a little tidbit on it, or some little angle, just so that they're like, okay, I can call you for more things, or they're busy. They don't want to have to come up with new topics. They always need something to come up with, or a new angle. And the more you can help them, the more they're going to keep coming back to you.
So switching gears just a little bit, you said that you now work with your husband, and I am curious just to hear a little bit about, one, the decision to work together, and then two, sort of how that's gone and how you're structuring sort of work-life balance so that, work's not bleeding into personal life and personal life isn't getting brought into the office. Can you just sort of talk to me about how that has been?
Yes. So obviously there's challenges and there's pros and cons to everything. We're in LA, and I made a decision to work from home. We have a very nice home office. I went and made the decision after what it would take to get even a crappy office around here. And I was like, that for that $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month for what would probably look crappy, let's work from home. So that there's again, it does bleed into our lives, but part of the decision to work together was that work-life balance and wanting to do, have the lifestyle that we're able to do. And he was working in fundraising at a humane society, raising for pets and stuff. And he really liked that. And he has a PR background and has done marketing and done a lot of customer service stuff. So I knew he'd be really good with my clients as far as customer service. And I wanted to have the flexibility for us to be able to go work this week wherever we wanted to be. Like if we have the conference, or I'm doing TV in New York, or we want to go to Europe for a month, we can go do that and still keep the ball rolling and not having to count his vacation days. Working together at home, we definitely, I have to put like a little sign up being like, I'm working, we're working versus like, I'm just cruising the internet or whatever. But it has been a really good opportunity. It's not right for everyone. We don't have kids at home, which makes it much easier to work from home. I talk to other advisors and I'm like, this wouldn't work if your 2-year-old is running around the house. Nothing against that, but just our dogs, we can put in another room and they'll be fine. Kids, you can't just leave. So, and sometimes you just need to get out of the office. Also, being in here in LA from where I specifically live, it's just a nice presentation. I think it's more comfortable, and owning a house is right in where my niche market would fit. I just think it's a good thing for that. And it was just kind of time for him to leave his job, which was part of the piece that really worked well. And it kind of helped me make the move out of the broker-dealer RIA space, because I was a little reticent to leave. And, it's one of those things you're like, I know I'm going to do this someday. And it just kind of, it gave it the deadline and the process to make the move happen, which is one of the biggest benefits there. And just because otherwise, it's easy to push stuff off, so. But we work together. I pay him a salary, but I mean, realistically, it's all our money at this point. So it's that's more of just semantics, I guess. There's tax benefits, pros and cons, and 401ks and all of that fun stuff. But you really need to think about if you can work with your spouse and if it'll work. I think eventually the plan is for him to get licensed and be an advisor at some point, but that's a ways down the road, because I'm really trying to decide personally and for us if I just want to be a lifestyle practice, which is very appealing right now and very, very profitable, or if I want to go the route of growing the firm and having staff and having people. And there's pros and cons to both, and I haven't decided yet, but
yeah, it's a tough decision to make.
I listen to Kits's podcast and I keep hearing all these horror stories, not horror stories, but just things that I would find miserable. All the things I don't want to deal with are the things that would come when you get to that more employee range. And, and I have a lot of people that I have on my team that I would be delegating stuff to that are not directly working for me, but if I had someone that's editing my blog or doing my website, those people are not employees. And there's a very big difference between paying a web person versus an employee and payroll and all of that fun stuff. And then also I was just looking I do the math and I'm like, well, this firm has $300 million in management, but they have 20 employees. And I go, I bet I'm making more money. And it's not just about that, but I'm making more money than the owner of that firm. And I know I work, if you really take the client time and the work that's actual work, I'm definitely below 40 hours a week. I mean, if you take the time that I'm, socially networking and I'm blogging and I'm doing TV and I'm doing that stuff, it's more than that. But it's a very different thing for me to be like, it's Saturday and I'm spending an hour writing a blog versus it's Saturday and I'm seeing client meetings, or I'm finishing a financial plan, or I'm sending out statements or paperwork. It's a very different conversation for me, and the flexibility of, if I don't do a blog this week, the world will not end, versus if I don't call a client back, the world will not end either. But, that's bad. Certain things have to happen where there's just more flexibility, but one of my things is I feel like I'm getting so many calls per week and I can't take all the clients, and I'm referring so many people to other advisors that it's like, well, wouldn't it be nice if those people were on my team?
Yes.
So there is this will probably change over time, and my decisions will change over time, but I definitely would probably be more in an organic growth rather than, I was in a firm before that was hiring, especially when I hired, they were hiring like crazy, and, was going through stuff, and I just don't want to be the manager of 20 or 30 people, so it'd have to be, the right situation. And I've had some people that would like to roll up under me or be part of my team, and we'll see what happens with that. But right now I'm just really enjoying being a lifestyle practice.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that's where a lot of the firms like Rick Edelman and Dave Ramsey, this is where a lot of those programs came from, was from a CEO that just had a gift at media and content and communicating complex topics into simple ways that spurred people into action. Rick Edelman does not run the day-to-day operations and hiring of his firm, so but it is a huge decision that I think you're very wise to actually think about, because a lot of advisors don't have this conversation with themselves or with their significant other. They just say oh, well, I'm getting 10 prospect calls a week, so let's go hire a couple of advisors. And you look a couple years down the line and you're miserable, making less money than you were as a solo, which I have seen that quite a bit, that you actually start making less money over time just because you're reinvesting in the business. And you end up owning a business that you hate. instead of having the job that you love, which is sort of where you're at today. And it's not that one way is right or wrong. It's just you have to make the right decision for you given the current life stage.
Absolutely. And I'm still in my 30s, so I've got time to make that decision, and it may change over time. Or if, again, there's a difference between really going for it and having, a huge goal of a huge firm, or, I really like this person, or I've met this person at a conference. We are like in the same niche, or we really complement each other, or they add something to the firm, and slowly building it where they're maybe up and running already versus starting from scratch and really training from scratch.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily the most patient person, so I don't know, like, what's a Roth IRA again? Year two, I might, stab someone. So I'm totally kidding, but you know what I mean? Like, oh, how did you get here? How did you pass your test? No, I'm totally kidding.
So 2 points with that. I mean, one is if you're an advisor that wants to have a niche market of serving the LGBT community, go open up a shop in LA next to David Ray's office.
Yes.
Because you're getting 10 prospects a week. So 500 a year. You're not working with 500 new clients a year. But one thing I do want to ask and just circle back on, did you say that your clients are actually coming into your home, to your home office and meeting with you?
Yes. So I've been doing that I've been doing that probably at my previous firm. I was still doing that. I was working from home about 3 days a week, and I was in like a traditional office down in the South Bay, about 20 miles from my house previously. So there was really great advantages to that. Just from a geographical standpoint, 20 miles in different parts of the country is not a big deal, but in LA traffic, that's a very different
it's 2 hours. Yeah.
So it really, it was great that, I'd go on Mondays and Fridays and do all my paperwork in the traditional office and use their fabulous printer and copier. And, that's where their back office staff was processing everything was. But then I was having clients come into my home, which I don't recommend for everyone by any stretch. But for me, it just is the right way to do it, because right now, I'm in my pajamas still. It's we're filming this or taping this on West Coast time, or early on West Coast time. But I get dressed up when I see clients. I'm close to the studios. It just gives me the flexibility to have where I'll see some early morning meetings, take a little break for lunch at home, and go to the gym. And then maybe if I see a client or two in the evening, it's early evening, and it gives me the flexibility to do what I want versus like, okay, I'm driving to the office, I'm parking, doing all that stuff. And I really see the most efficient schedule to do what I want to be doing. And just from a calling card standpoint, and for me, you get to meet a lot of people meet my dogs. I don't have a dog lovers as a niche, but it's one of my tags in client relationship manager, because, people like the dogs, and it makes me more human as well, beyond the stuff. And then I don't want this to sound like a brag, but I live in a nice neighborhood. I have a nice home. It presents well, I guess, is what
Sure.
I was presenting. And it would definitely present better than I went and got a typical office in LA that I could afford or justify. And when I did the math of how many extra clients a year I'd have to take on just to pay for a crappy office, I just was like, no, no thanks. But it's very different here. The cost here, again, in the XYPN, I talk to people that are paying like, oh, my office is $300. I'm like, for $300, I'd have an office. For $3,000 or $4,000 plus, expenses, I'm not going to. And most offices here, you can't park, and it's not convenient, and a million other reasons I've justified it. And again, it's not right for everyone, but it really works for me.
No, that makes perfect sense. I don't hear a lot of advisors that have clients coming to their home, but especially depending on the home setup. And again, if you don't have kids, that's one piece. Some folks have like a dining room or an office with exterior access that they can come in. Like, you may have that home setup that works, but I think it's great. Like I said, it's different. It's unique, which there are some people that are going to say like, no, I'm not coming to your house. Like, this is weird. And that's okay, because they may not be the type of person that you actually want to, that you're going to get along with. Right. And so I think it's awesome. Like I said, it's not for everybody. You have such a fascinating, just overall story, I feel like, and just how you've been able to, just how you have grown this firm so significantly and really been able to establish yourself while being you. And I think that's so awesome to see, because I think sometimes it's so hard to be authentic as a financial advisor, particularly, when you're used to being discriminated against, and that just historically in our country, that it's hard to just be you. But I commend you for being so authentic and being yourself and putting yourself out there. And it shows in the fact that you've grown your firm and working with clients that love you for you and aren't, thinking that you're someone else, which I just think that's so awesome.
Thank you. And it just makes you stand out too. Cause I mean, we can all listen to podcasts and we hear stuff and, everyone else's advisor site sounds the same. So, I mean, I would tell, whatever your situation is, mention your kids, mention your pets, mention your extracurricular activities in your bio. It doesn't have to be the main point, and have it on your website. Have pictures of you doing something that isn't in a suit and tie or in the office. It just adds a different layer. And if someone is trying to decide between 2 advisors or 10 advisors when they've Googled and found you or been referred in, it just gives you a little extra leg up. And again, I think it really helps if clients feel like they know you, or they can, obviously you want them to trust you, but it just helps build that trust and rapport a little faster. If they're like, I know you have dogs, I heard you did this bike ride. I've done that bike ride, or my friend did the bike ride, or, whatever your activities are, it just adds a little layer to it. And it may not help and it may not resonate with everyone, but I'd much rather put it out there and lose someone that I don't really want as a client. And it can hurt sometimes. There's definitely some people that, I know I'm not taking on that had, huge amounts of money and would have been amazing clients from the financial standpoint, but I just don't want to deal with people. I'm at the place in my career where I don't want people I don't want to deal with. And, it makes it a lot easier. There's definitely people that call in and I'm like, I'm not I'm using low cost index funds, but I'm not the person that's going to be like the cheapest fee. I don't think I'm the cheapest advisor, and nor should I be at this point. Also, I don't think anyone in XY for what we're offering service wise should be the cheapest. If someone comes in and says, well, so-and-so is going to do it for free, and they tell me they work at a life insurance company, I'll go, okay. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying you're going to pay for it one way or the other. I've talked to people after and they come back 2 years or 3 years later, because I always leave the door open. And I'm like, oh, so you didn't pay my retainer fee of, $2,000, whatever I quoted, $2,000, $3,000. But now you have this whole life policy and nothing else that you put $1,000 a month in for 3 years. That was definitely more than my fee would have been. And I'm not saying, there's no reason to have a whole life policy or anything like that. I'm not at that position. But if if they skipped your 401k or they skipped putting you in an IRA or they didn't do a financial plan, you didn't really get what you paid for. So, you didn't get any value for your money. So I think take full pride in what you're doing. And I think everyone on this group that I've talked to is doing so much more than anyone else I've talked to in the broker dealer space and any other space. So, I mean, we're doing good work for our people, and
so true.
Not everyone's going to appreciate it. I know there's definitely, I hear people that it's, well, someone balked at my fee. I'm like, you could throw out $10,000 and someone will say it's cheap, and you could throw out $50 a year and someone's going to be like, oh my God, that's so much money. So don't take it personally. And I know it's tougher when someone that's a big client, a bigger client says no, but there are times too where you're like, if they're not willing to pay me $100 a month or $200 a month or whatever it is for what you're doing, do you really want them as a client? Do you want to work for $2 an hour? I mean, we can send you to China and have you work in a sweatshop if you want to, slave labor or whatever you want. But they're, and you can make choices. There's definitely people that I would charge less or discount my fees because just to make it work for them, that are very motivated. And I try and leave a few spots in my client base for people that I think are just really motivated, but maybe just are younger and don't have a ton of assets. But that's a choice I've made. But I don't want it to be someone that's coming in and has $10 million and it's like, I want to pay 0.01% for my assets under management, or I don't want to pay for a financial plan. It's just, they have the money to pay, so you need to pay. And that's my opinion. Again, to each their own. But if someone can pay and they're not willing, it's going to be a problem down the road. They're not going to take your advice when the market dips. They're not going to take your advice when you say you want to retire and not run out of money. You can take out this amount per year. They're going to be like, oh, I'm taking my kids on vacation. And you're going to be the one that looks bad, or they're going to blame you of why their account's going down, even though they're spending, 10 times what you told them they could spend sustainably. But it's your fault for not earning enough. Even if, like last year you earned 30%, but they take out 40%, you didn't earn them enough, and it'll catch up with you.
Right. Doesn't work well. So no, it's a great point that you've got to charge for the value that you're providing. And there will always be people looking for the low cost provider. You never want to be the low cost provider because there will always be someone else that comes along to do it cheaper, and that client will leave you anyway. So as we're sort of coming to a close, I'll ask you the final question. And that is, if you could go back and tell younger David Ray one piece of advice, one thing that you wish you had learned prior that you know now, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
I think I was listening to your podcast, a few other podcasts this week, and I was just really thinking about this one. It was hard because I was like, well, at first I was going to say I would tell myself to go back and leave the broker-dealer space sooner. But I think so many things really happened at the right time by going when I did go. So it was just a much easier transition. I was at a great place in my life where everything else was solid. So I wasn't like trying to like juggle too many things. But I think, especially as I talk to some of the younger people, invest in yourself and really get the things in your practice that you need to make your life easier. I think there's a lot of times in my practice and my career that I've worked too hard with stuff I shouldn't have been working hard on, like delegating paperwork or paying people to do my website. And I was spending so much time doing things that weren't my wheelhouse or weren't generating new business or that I didn't enjoy. And I think I could have been things have gone really well, but I could still be so much further along in certain areas if I had paid for a coach at different points or, again, had my website and invested in my website. It's amazing how much better it can be once I left the broker-dealer space and go put this little button that says contact me. Like my thing skyrocketed and compliance didn't like that because, how do we know where that's going to go, even though it was going to email me to my work email. But, there's certain things that, I just know that I could have done earlier and that would have made my life easier and enjoy life. And then also don't be driven by trying to keep up with the Joneses. I know it's very easy to go in, like when we talk of what someone's doing revenue or someone client-wise, do what's right for you. And I'm a big fan of figuring out what you want to make and what you need to make, and building your business plan around that. I mean, by all means, go beyond it and earn more money, but like you don't need to stress because, someone else is making more money or someone else took on more clients, or, if you're making enough to pay your bills and do all the things you want to be doing. Personally, I like to enjoy my life and I want to have more money so I can do more nice things. But it's not a endless number. I don't need to double my practice. I have a pretty substantial goal for the next 2 years, but I want to hit $1 million in revenue by the end of 2019. Looking forward, but that's more of a business goal. I don't need that money to live. So, finding that balance between of what you need to do. Like I could go to a trade show and sit there and have miserable clients that I don't want, or I could go to every networking event, every chamber events, or maybe get a client here or there. But is it worth it? That's my thing from where I'm at, but I'm luckily at a benefit of having, 65 to 100 clients already. If I was starting from scratch, I would probably I'd go back and do a lot of things I did at the beginning of just being everywhere, because you just never know who's going to refer someone in or who you're going to meet at those things. But I wouldn't want that to be my personal business model forever, to be at every event ever. So
it's such good advice that, spend money to save time, spend money on experts so you're not spinning your wheels, but stay really focused. Stay focused on the end goal and what you're actually trying to build, and do your best to not get distracted, which is extremely difficult as an entrepreneur.
Life happens.
Well, David Ray, thank you so much for taking the initiative to reach out and for being on the show and just sharing your expertise and wisdom and your experience. I know this will be awesome learning for a lot of advisors. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Never miss another opportunity due to a missed call. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN, or call 1-844-853-7829.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.